Okay, so guys, the name of the script that I'm doing is create sites with one domain. I just uploaded. I'm going to try to avoid doing the network diagram on the board because then you don't see it. So basically this is going to be our network diagram initially. We're going to add more servers to this. This might be the network diagram that we use for the rest of the class. And basically we're going to have two sites, a west site and an east site. And in between the two sites will be some sort of public connection, some WAN connection. Think of it like the WAN connection between here and North Campus. This WAN connection costs us money. The more data that goes across the WAN, it is going to increase our ISP bill. So what you want to do is control what traffic goes across that WAN link. Basically, we're going to set up something called sites and services, and when users are on this site, they'll authenticate to these DCs. When users are on this site, they'll authenticate to those DCs. If you have a DFS server here, and we're going to add those later, they'll go to the local DFS server. They won't go across the WAN link to grab files from the other DFS server. We're going to define, normally, who defines replication? What's the service that provides that defines replication? We talked about it. I said you'll never remember it. Knowledge consistency checker. Okay, we're going to override that, and we're going to define who's going to replicate across the WAN link. We only want DC1 to replicate with DC3. We don't want DC2 to replicate across the WAN link. Everyone in this site is going to replicate to DC1. DC1 will replicate it over to DC3, and then everyone on this site will replicate to one another. And those are called bridgehead servers. So we're going to set that up today. It's not a very difficult lab, but it does require things to be done in a certain order if you want to make your life easy. The other thing that I was playing around with Hyper-V and I was doing something else, and I noticed that when you look at the network advanced features, there's something called device naming. I can force the network adapter to be brought into the guest operating system. So if it's, I'm assuming, I'm going to test it out, that if it's attached to a public switch, it's going to be called public inside. So I'm going to test that out. So I'm going to press play to run this. It's going to erase all my machines and build a new network. I'm not having it start everything automatically. I'm going to start one thing at a time just to speed up the lab. It's called create sites with one domain. Now guys, you don't have to run this now. If you're still doing the other lab and you want to keep your machine the same, but when you come in and practice, you can't. You don't have to run this until you're ready to do this lab. I'm going to choose my parent disk. I'm using the 1802 V2. So I'm going to start my NATs up first. Guys, for this to work, I didn't add any NIC
any network cards to the image. I added them all manually for the NATs. So I'm going to boot up my NAT routers first, configure those first. Before I start doing anything as far as configuring services, I want to make sure that I'm fully connected to the internet. Here's the subnets that we're going to use. For West, we're going to do 172.16.0.0/18. East, 172.16, no, dot, we're going to increment by twos. We're going to increment by fours in the third octet. No. Increment by, yeah, 64/18. And our WAN link so the NAT router will be .1, DC2, the DC1 will be .2, DC3 will be .3 in the West subnet. NAT2 will be 64.1 on the East. DC3 will be 64.2, DC4 will be 64.3. And this will be our interfaces for our WAN link. Now guys, this WAN link is something called black box. Your home router, when it goes into the wall, what happens? What does the ISP do to that? How is that connected to the ISP? We don't know. So we're really not concerned how our ISP connects this. We're just going to give it two private IP address, assuming it's some sort of frame relay or some sort of private network that our ISP has set up between us and the remote site. That we just call it black box because we don't know what's in it, how our ISP implements it, nor do we really care. They just handle that connection for us. I'm going to sign into NAT1 and start configuring it. The last lab I did mostly graphical. Now I'm going to try to do more PowerShell. I'm going to sign into NAT2 at the same time. I am. Also, I'm going to boot up DC1 and get that going.
Your machine is really fast.
I'm only booting up a couple machines at a time. I'm only starting up a couple at a time. No, it didn't work, guys. The device naming. That's a shame. Guys, I want to delete one of these interfaces. This is not connected to anything, I'm just going to remove it. Listen, instead of doing this device naming on, maybe someone try this. If someone wants to practice that, set up a spare virtual machine and try the name switch. See if that works. So guys, I have 3 interfaces. I know this one's public. I don't know what this one is or what this one is. So what I'm going to do is go to settings. I'm going to disconnect WAN. So this is WAN. Hit the tab key, and this is West. Then once I've identified all my interfaces, reconnect the WAN interface. Again, I'm going to do mostly PowerShell. I think it's a little easier to read if it's up here. New net IP. .172.16.0.1. Prefix is 18 bits. Alias is West. No default gateway. And that's all I need. IP address and subnet mask. Only one interface per computer gets a gateway, and that's going to be our WAN link. .172.16.128.1. Prefix will be /30. It's a WAN link. I only need 2 usable hosts per subnet. Interface is WAN. Set DNS client server addresses. For this side, I'm going to point to 172.16.0.2, DC1, and DC2. I'm just going to save all the commands that I've run locally on each box. I'm going to give you a minute, and then I'm going to run this and let it reboot. Okay, take a picture of it so I can get this done in one class period. I'm going to leave my public interface as dynamic. I'll pull back up. Also, you have the picture.
named them if you didn't name.
It did? And it puts the name that you put in there?
Yeah, it looks like.
Okay, but, we need to remove the default deck.
Yeah, I didn't do that, but they aren't.
Okay, no, they're in there, but what are they inside? Open up the machine and look inside. Yeah, connect to it and see what's inside. That's fine. Hmm? You can sit wherever you want.
But are those people coming back?
They might be. I don't know. I don't know. I think this is everyone. I'm not sure though. I don't know what. No one was sitting there, right?
No.
Yeah, that's clear. That's free anyways. Guys, I won't. It'll show me as being disconnected because the DNS servers aren't set up yet. No big deal. Guys, if you install routing through PowerShell, it kind of flakes out half the time. So I'm just going to do that graphically. Did everyone see the email address about that the class was open on Tuesday? Also, for those people still having problems signing into Microsoft, during the final last session, the guy told me that we need to have you contact Microsoft directly. But I didn't want to give it to you in the middle of the final. I didn't want you to be playing with that and not practicing for the final. So I gave you the contact information for Microsoft. You know, they don't want us to give them individual cases. They really can't talk to us. So they want you to call them.
I guess what I meant is, the last time we had class, it's not on there because I came in after you guys loaded it.
Oh, boot into Windows 10 and we'll fix it.
Okay.
So every Tuesday, the class will never be open?
Oh, this classroom?
So if you want to come here and practice, I mean, how many people were here last time? We had a good number. Yeah. And were you able to help each other out? Did you get to a point where you were just dead in the water?
No, we tried to help each other out.
Did you try and fail, or were there certain?
Well, there were certain things that we failed at, yeah.
Oh, okay. Well, what Dorothy did when she was having a problem, she texted me the picture.
Oh.
So and then I can just run over when there's a lull.
Yeah, no, it didn't.
Run a script?
Run this. Go to Software Center, search for student, run the script that says dual boot by student. Are you up?
Yeah.
Okay, so let me pull up this. I need. That right there.
I mean.
Go to software center. No.
No.
Type software, search type. Over here, type student.
And it'll,
Got it. Retry. And the course name is CTS3392C. And the reference number is 622542. And the session is 3. Click OK. Click on close, reboot, and it'll be there now.
okay, guys, while this is going on, I'm gonna move over to NAT 2 and configure that stuff. I want to fix this. I want to fix the script too before I.
Professor?
Yeah.
Let me go back to that other script.
Guys, if you haven't ran the script yet, just wait till I fix it.
Still gonna have all the books in here. Like how long? Once you have money again.
Guys, I'm just going to upload that script real quick.
That's true.
Guys, if you look at some of my other scripts that are already there, I give you a way to actually query the name and find the name. I was thinking this might be easier, but alas, it didn't work. Okay, I'm going to upload this to the course. Okay, so back when that one is fully installed, I'm going to go to Tools, Routing and Remote Access. Going to configure it to be a NAT router. Choose NAT. My public interface, it's asking which one is the public interface, the one called public. Don't choose WAN. That's the interface connected to the internet. This wizard only allows me to add one interface to share the internet with. I'm just going to choose WAN. Then when I get inside, I'll add West. Guys, in real life, I don't think you're going to be using Microsoft routers. So I'm not real concerned if you're very familiar with this. So what I'm going to do is add that other interface to NAT. So I'm going to right click, new interface. I'm going to add the West, make it a private network, and just for the router itself, I'm going to add the internal interface and make it private. Now I'm going to show you my routing table. I have a default gateway that I get dynamically from the school's network. I know about the 0.0 network. I know about 128. So I know about 00 that's attached to West. I know about 128 that's attached to WAN. But I don't know about the East network. I don't know how to get there. So I need to add a static route showing how to get to the East network. So I'm going to right click, add a new static route. If I had a packet on this router destined for anywhere in this network, which interface would I send it out? The West interface, the WAN interface, or the public? The WAN. So I'm going to choose the WAN interface. What IP represents all IPs in that subnet? The network address, the subnet mask. And I'm going to send it to where? If I'm going to send it out here, where do I send it to? NAT to the near side interface, right here. And this is going to have an IP address of 172.16.128.2 eventually. This one is 128.1, this will be 128.2. And they both have a subnet mask of /30. So now I know about the internet, I know about the West network, I know about the WAN network, and I now also know about the East network. So I know about all three subnets. There's the West, /18, 64.0/18 is East, 128/30, 128.0/30 is the WAN interface. Okay, so this NAT router is configured. So I'm going to go over and do the same thing for NAT2. Again, my network cards are all messed up, so I'm going to manually fix those. So this is public. I'm going to disconnect WAN. Label that WAN. So this must be East. If I look at my diagram, this is West, this is WAN, this is East. Guys, I'm using Draw.io. When you're done, you can save as and download it to your device as an XML. I've already saved it once. It just keeps, so if you ever want to come back here, you can reload the same diagram and make changes to it. pretty nice little utility. And it's free to use. So,
You can upload that to us?
the diagram, yeah, I can do that. So new net IP. One 172.16.64.1, a prefix of 18, interface alias east, new net IP 172.16.128.2. That is for the WAN interface. It has the subnet mask of 30, and that is WAN. I'm not going to do anything to the to the public interface, because that's going to be dynamic from the ISP, our school. CS01, NAT2, restart. So I'm going to save my commands. Okay. If you want a picture of it, go ahead. Listen, on the day of the practice, I'll have this here, so if you want Anna to pull it up, you can just, and she can pull up the script, so it'll be saved. I'll write all my commands under one thing called commands. So I'm going to press play. I just want to check something real quick. Make sure I didn't make a mistake on that one. No, I didn't. Now I'm going to install routing remote access. And at that point, our two sites are physically connected together. While I'm waiting for this to install, I'm going to open up ICMP traffic.
Closed by default.
I'm sorry?
Disabled by default.
It is until you join it to a domain. When you join it to the domain, it'll open it up. But these machines, these net routers, won't ever be joined to the domain.
directory?
Server 2016 V2 1802.
I should be running the one domain.
Yes, sites with one domain.
Even though last class I didn't run anything.
Right, I erased all that.
Thank you.
I'm just going to boot up another DC while I'm waiting. Okay, it's installed. Now I'm going to configure it as a NAT router. Once I configure it, I have to add the second NICs. Then I have to configure a static route. Choose NAT. Got the glitch. Choose your public interface. I don't care which one you choose because you're going to add the other one once you get inside. What did I do wrong? Guys, if you get this, I missed something. I'm going to open up PowerShell. I'll show you what I missed. If it asks you to enable name resolution or anything like that,
DNS issue?
yep. Add DNS client server, set DNS client server dash server addresses 10. Sorry. So on the east side, I'll point it to 172.16.64.2 and 64.3. That will be DC 3 and 4.
You're gonna set those up.
I'm sorry?
You're gonna set those up.
Right, I'm going to set those up. So I missed this command, so I'm just going to run it now. All I'm doing is configuring the DNS client settings. Try again. Configure and enable. NAT. Public interface. I don't care which one you choose. Then finish. I still got the glitch. So I'm going to try to disable and I don't have NAT here. Sometimes, guys, you can just go add a new interface, new routing protocol and add NAT. Other times it won't work. I'm not going to take the risk. I'm going to disable it and try to redo it. If that doesn't work, I'm going to uninstall, reinstall. I don't know what it is. The last couple versions of Windows, this has been very glitchy. Still not there. Let me try the other thing. No. Uninstall, reinstall. Guys, take your first break now. This is going to be a minute.
No, you have to copy and paste the title. They do it. Yeah. When you go to the just copy and paste.
you pass it, you bring in the receipts to the front desk and you
Okay. Building 13?
Building 13. It's, there's no,
There's no program connected to
there's no vouchers for us to purchase.
Oh,
Did anyone see if this rebooted? Or was it hanging?
We might have to exit out and go back in. Yeah.
Thank you. Because I have to let the uninstall finish, and then I'm going to reinstall it.
Ask you, do you ever try running those scripts on some other computers like these?
In Hyper-V or Windows 10? I mean, Windows Server or Windows 10?
Windows 10.
Windows 10, the commands are slightly different
Okay.
for PowerShell.
And
Some work, some don't.
I've tried in Windows Server also.
It should work, but the only thing is you have to modify this location. Look,
I know how to modify. I think it's in.
this right here. This line right here, this is what screws people up.
Yeah, that's not it. I modified this. So what it did was
Well, tell me the error that you're getting.
I don't know if it was giving me an error, but it spun up the VM. You know, there was like 5 of them, and then it went down. It just appeared in Hyper-V like for a second. So it wasn't able to properly start it.
Here's what normally the issue is in that particular case. You're using a disk that is in use. So verify that each of these you're putting a separate. When you create the VM, make sure you're not using the same disk. You know, the thing is, bring in your script and let me look at it.
It's okay.
I got to see the changes that you made, and maybe the parent disk never got created. So this is
So it didn't work on my desktop, right? It didn't work on Windows 10. It didn't work on Windows Server. On Windows Server, I got a little farther, but then I took a laptop with Windows Server on it, and it worked. I can explain that.
I think I'm still going to go with
The drives being used.
the drives are NICs, but NICs won't let it boot.
That's what I thought. That is the NICs.
Okay, show me your script. If it's a laptop, bring it in. You
You
know.
have to re-enable the mix. Right?
No.
Disable them and
The laptop, I would just use it to test. It has like 8 gigs of RAM. I cannot run it on a laptop, but I just want to see if it's gonna work.
But
The laptop has one NIC, and my desktop has multiple NICs.
okay,
so
just
I think
show me the script and let me go from there. Because that's the only thing I can do. Is to try to diagnose it without knowing other than it's not running. It's too hard.
I thought maybe you tried to run on some other computers. Yeah?
No, I have, because other students have done this in the past, and it's mostly a disk problem, sometimes a NIC problem.
It's almost always the disk for me. Like,
Are you doing it at home?
yeah, I get it to work, but it's usually the disk I have to change. And then once
help
you
me
change it,
so I can be on the same page as you. Is that too much?
On the next break.
Okay.
Okay, guys, so I don't care if you get on the same page as me now, because I want you to do that on a Tuesday. Okay, you understand what I'm saying?
Yes.
Okay, so I'm going to configure and enable routing remote access. Take 2.
I had to change more stuff on Windows 10 than I did that on.
What are you going to change the drive? I mean, obviously the drives are
Yeah.
I changed the drives, but that didn't work.
Sometimes it's a permission. It's a permission where the permission for the parent disk.
But I would expect some kind of error.
But are you running PowerShell as administrator or?
If you don't, it tells you an error
Yeah.
anyway. The permission's not there, so it's not bad.
Well, listen, try to manually create a child disk.
I did.
And
I can duplicate this manually. I can make everything manually. but the moment you run the script,
I remember the errors that I got. I got a bunch of them, and I just kept fixing them, and it finally worked. But I can't remember which one.
yeah. I'll try
So,
to-
let me see the script first.
Yeah, that.
And listen, make a note of where you save the parent disks.
I'm pretty sure it's not this. I'm pretty sure I'll point to the right.
Well, here's why. Typically, when you might try to reboot your machine, if the machine starts up then disappears, you see it and it disappears, that's normally indication of a disk issue. Because it tries to create the VM, it tries to add the disk, it fails, and then drops out.
I'll try again.
Okay, I now have NAT. So I'm going to add the other interface, WAN, make it private. I know about the public network. I know about the east side. I know about the WAN, but I don't know about the west side. So I'm going to add that network. New static route. If I was going to connect, if I have a packet on this router destined for somewhere over here, which interface do I go out? Public, east, or WAN? And when I send it out WAN, who do I send it to? That interface on that one. So send it out WAN. The destination network is the subnet for the west side. This is the subnet and the subnet mask for the west side. This is the IP address of the near side interface on that one. So I'm going to open up a command prompt. I'm going to ping. The source address will be 172.16.64.1, and I'm going to try to ping, and I'll show you what I'm referring to on the map. I'm going to try to ping from here to here. If I try to ping without the uppercase S, it would ping from here to here, and I wouldn't know if this router was working properly. By defining it, if I say I want the ping to initiate from here, it'll route it first, send it across the WAN link, route it over to this interface. So I have complete connectivity. I can ping from the east side to the west side. So now I'm going to start promoting DCs. I'm going to work on DC1 first.
Can you do that in PowerShell?
Yep. I can pretty much do everything in PowerShell.
No, I know. I mean, like.
Yeah, I'm going to do it. I'm going to do all the child DC, all the additional domain controllers and the domain itself in PowerShell. I did it graphically the last video. In the documents folder of every machine, guys, I'm saving all my commands that I run. So when Anna's here, if you need her to go to a machine, have her go to the documents folder and open up that, right click, edit that file so you can see the commands. New net IP address. 170. (16.0.2) dash prefix, it's /18. Gateway is my router, my near side interface for my router, and the interface alias is Ethernet. Set DNS client services, and this is going to point to the upstream. Everyone else will point to this DC initially. This one will point to the upstream. Install -Windows features dash name domain, what is it? AD domain services. The restart won't happen until after I promote it. Rename -computer dash new name CS01 dash DC1 restart. I'm going to save this and run this. Okay, I only ran the last command. I'm just going to move this to the top. Okay. $PWD, I'm going to encrypt my password. Convert to secure string. As plain text. Install. Guys, before I can run the next thing, I need to run this. Because I can't run the install command until that's actually installed. The install -adds forest. I don't have that command until I install AD domain services. I just got your text.
Wow.
Install ADDS force, domain name, contoso.com, safe mode password is pwd force. I'm going to save this and run those two commands. Now, because of this reboot, it should reboot. Guys, in Windows 16, it reboots automatically, even if you don't put that there. So this is going to create my new forest. You can do this, or you can run through all those wizards I showed you. I think this is a lot easier. You got the script after I made the fix.
Oh, so you updated it?
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
Guys, while I'm waiting for this, I'm going to go give DC2 an IP address. This one is going to be 172.16.0.3. Prefix length, it will be 18 Install gateway will be .1, my router. The interface is called Ethernet. Set my DNS server. For this machine, I'm going to point it to DC1. Actually, while I'm waiting, I might as well install Windows features, AD, domain services, include the management tools, restart, press play. I'm going to go check on DC1. It's rebooting now. I'm going to go give DC3 an IP address and install Active Directory domain services. New net IP. This is on the east side, 172.16.0.64.2. It's a /18. The gateway will be 64.1. And the interface name is Ethernet. I'm going to point this to DC1 and 2. Install Active Directory. And rename. Okay, I can sign it to DC1. Now guys, I've installed the software and configured some settings, but I didn't make any other DCs. The reason why you want to hold off on doing that is you want those sites configured before you promote the other DCs, so at that point when they're promoted, they automatically fall on the right site. So I'm going to go into Active Directory. No, I'm not. First thing I'm going to do is configure my reverse. New zone. And I'm going to do it for the entire network. So I'm just going back to the classical address. So this will work for WAN, East, or West. Because they all start with 172.16. If you want, you can do ipconfig, register DNS, and that will create a pointer record for this machine. And there it is. Okay, so now let's go into sites and services. So the first thing we need to do is define the actual name of the sites. And then we got to create some subnets and associate those subnets with those sites. So if you're in that subnet, you'll be part of that site. So by default, it creates one site called default first name. I'm going to rename that West. I'm going to create another one called East. Now you have this site link that's created automatically. This is where you control replication between the two sites. So I'll go into this site link in a moment. But I'm going to link site East and West through the default IP site link. And I'll explain that in a moment. Click OK. So I have these two sites. Now I'm going to create subnets and associate them with the site. Guys, I'm not going to create a site for the WAN because that's really not under my control. I won't have any servers in the WAN. I'm only creating one site here and one site here. So I'm going to go to subnets and create two subnets. First one, I'm going to create a new subnet. Do 172.16.0.0/18. That, if you're in that subnet, that means you're on the West site. I'm going to create another subnet. 172.16.64.0/18. So that means if you're in that subnet, you're on the East site. So now we have this inter-site replication. I can replicate data across a site through two ways. Through normal IP traffic or through an email server. If I choose email, it'll install a little email server on this machine itself. And basically, if you have a really slow site link, maybe you don't want to use IP. At that point, you can use just have one server send another server all replication data inside of an email, and it'll replicate.
Pros and cons?
There is really if you're a slow link, you only have one choice, SMTP. Otherwise, just use normal IP.
Okay.
Why maintain an email server if you don't need to? So whenever data gets transferred from one site to another, it's going across the WAN link. That WAN link is considered dangerous because it's in a public network. So all data that goes across the site link is actually encrypted. So it uses a little more bandwidth than just the data itself because of that encryption thing. So guys, I might have a bunch of different sites. Always try to give your sites a more descriptive name so you know what they connect. So this one is going to be West and East. I know what two sites they connect. So if I right click it, I go into properties. And right now, it's only going to replicate 180 minutes. So the lowest I can go down for this lab is 15 minutes. Normally, DC replicate every 5 minutes. So maybe if you create a document in New York, if you don't need it immediately in LA, maybe you want to wait till replication occurs in 4 hours or something like that. So you can define how often it replicates. And I can have multiple site links associated to different physical interfaces. So I can say which site link is more preferred than the other by changing this cost. Maybe I don't want to allow any replication traffic on days that were open for business. So maybe at 8, I only want to allow it to replicate from 8 to 6, Monday through Friday. These other days, maybe I don't want to replicate anything at all.
So there's nothing going on, right?
Well, yeah, or maybe I want to only replicate when I know I'm around. Or maybe I want to replicate those days and then from 8 to 6, don't replicate, during business hours. Whatever your organization's plan is, that's kind of high noon. So right now we're going to replicate at all times. Guys, if you don't change this, when you create something on your lab, you might have to wait 180 minutes before it reaches the other site. So you got to be very careful about that. And we're going to come back into this once I have more servers here. But I can also determine who's replicating to who, but I can't see anything now because I don't have any other DCs. Once I have more DCs, we'll come back to this. But as soon as I promote, it's going to actually populate this automatically for me. If I was doing this graphically, if I was creating a DC graphically, we'll now have a box indicating which site to put them in. Or you can say, leave it alone and say choose automatically. We're going to leave it choose automatically. Which machine currently, what master roles does this currently have? The domain master roles, operation masters, would be the infrastructure, PDC, the RID, and for the forest master roles, operation masters rather, the new name, is domain naming master and the schema master. So right now it's holding all of those. Plus, it's also holding my global catalog. I don't want this to be on the same machine as this. One thing with PowerShell is I can tell it when I promote it to a DC2, to grab this and move it to DC2 during the promotion process. And I'll show you.
Of the second PC.
Yeah, because I want to leave the global catalog alone, but move the infrastructure master. I want to have one global catalog per site.
You can't do it when you set up the first one because there's nothing to move it to.
Correct. And you can't say not create a global catalog because it needs one. So we have the basic outline for our site set up. Now I'm going to promote DC2 and it's going to give us more options. So I'm going to go to DC2. Okay, I'm going to do install a new domain controller. Not a new force, not a new domain. The domains already exist. the domain, the force already exists, the domain already exists. I'm just adding an additional domain controller in my domain. But first I need to set my password. I'm going to leave it this way. There's another way you can do it, but that might confuse people. This way I think it's clear. The domain name is composo.com. The password is $PWD. And the credentials is get, I'm just going to have her prompt me for the credentials.
Will it do the DNS automatically? Because I've been adding the DNS.
It will do the DNS automatically. I could define if I don't want a global catalog on a machine, I could say no global catalog. And I can move my infrastructure master at the same time. So I'm going to force this one not to have a global catalog. I want this one to have a global catalog. I want this one not to have a global catalog, but I want it to move the infrastructure master from here to here. It's kind of a long command, but by default it will do the DNS. I forgot to put force, but that's all right. Now within the site, KCC will define my replication topology. But across the WAN link, between the sites, I'm going to define the replication topology.
Is KCC not able to do it over anywhere?
It could if I left it alone, but I'm going to define machines as bridgehead servers. And I'll explain what those machines need. They have to handle additional things that normal DCs don't, like encryption. Because all I needed to do was copy over the data, because it's not going to take as long. It doesn't need to create the data like the first DC. I'm just going to look at DC4 and make sure I installed and give it an IP. I didn't. So I'm going to give DC4 an IP address and install the software and rename it. I'm going to check DC3. as well. DC3 worked. New net IP 172.16.64.3. The next IP in line on the east subnet. Prefix is /18. Gateway is 172.16.64.1. The interface is Ethernet. I'm going to set the DNS server. Who do I point the DNS server to? DC3, because DC3 should already be promoted and should know all the information that DC1 has. So why send DC4 across the WAN link? So 172.16.64.2 and interface alias is Ethernet. Install the software. And rename. Let that install. Now the KCC is going to be aware that there's a new DC. And the KCC is going to decide which DC it should replicate against. Right now, there's only DC1 and DC2. So it's going to be real easy for KCC to decide. Replication takes a few minutes. Don't rush this part. Let it work itself out. Don't try to click too many buttons and force things. Just, you got to be patient with this. If you rush it, it just takes forever to kind of work itself out. If you go to Tools, you should have your DNS there, already populated. I have forward lookup and the reverse lookup. If I go to Sites and Services, there's my two subnets. I've copied it over. I have 0 servers in the east, and I have 2 servers in the west. Which one is a global catalog? Right now, DC1 will get replication from DC2, defined by the KCC. Right now, DC2 will get replication from DC1. If you right-click this and go to Properties, you can see the current replication number. So the update sequence number I currently have is 61, ending in 61, and so this one of them is behind. I don't know what the other digits were. So they don't have the exact same data yet. So they're still replicating, but that's okay because they just realized, it's already configured the replication cycle. So that's a good sign. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to prevent this machine, DC2, from replicating across the WAN link. I'm going to tell sites and services to turn this machine into a bridgehead server. So I'm going to right click here, go to properties. And I am not going to go there. I'm going to right click here and go to properties. So I want this machine to be a bridgehead server for IP. And basically, by defining the machine as a bridgehead server, you're saying to sites and services, this is the only one that is allowed to replicate across the WAN link. So so any other machine on this site that's not bridgehead server will not be allowed to replicate. Now, this server needs to have more memory and more CPU power than the other servers, because this server is going to be responsible for encrypting data going across the WAN link. If you didn't define a bridgehead server, that data would not be more heavily encrypted than normal domain traffic. So this way you know that replication, everything that's going across that WAN link is going to be encrypted.
What was it used to encrypt it?
I have no clue. I really don't know. I'm sure that there's a way to find out, but I don't know what it is. You might even be able to change it to something heavier. You install a certificate server, which we're doing in this class, you might be able to create a certificate for that. So, guys, I'm not using this protocol to replicate data, so I'm not going to bother defining a bridgehead. A bridgehead defined on one side is not useful until you assign a bridgehead on the other side, because this machine is going to encrypt traffic. I need another machine at the other end to decrypt it. So until I get DC3 up and running on the east site, nothing's really going to happen just yet. I could go in here, and if I accidentally made a machine a global catalog, I can uncheck it. Or I could make one a global catalog if I wanted to. Guys, I'm in the philosophy, unless you're a huge site, only have one global catalog per site. If this global catalog goes down, it can always go across the WAN link to reach the other global catalog. So I'm going to highlight servers again. I can see that DC1 is a bridgehead for the IP protocol. So now I'm going to promote DC3. Guys, and again, there's a 15-minute delay replication going across the WAN link, so this is just going to take a while. So just let it happen and just kind of let it bake. Do I want this machine to be a global catalog? Yeah, because I don't have any global catalogs on this side yet. So I'm going to, do I need to move the infrastructure master? Nope. I already have the infrastructure master here, the global catalogs here, so I can make this a global catalog and leave the infrastructure master alone. And I'm on the wrong DC. Oh, guys, just to look at it. When I make a change in sites and services, if I'm affecting another domain, right now it's real simple because I only have one domain. But if I was trying to make a change to a DC that was in a different domain, I might need to be the enterprise admin. So keep that in mind. But if I was only going to change a DC in my own domain, I could just be the domain admin. So, it's simple now, but if you had multiple domains here, I don't care which domain you're part of. If you're on the west site, if you're in that subnet, you're on the west site, regardless of your domain. The site is another container. When I apply group policies, I can apply a group policy locally. I can apply a group policy to a site, meaning if there's 4 domains in that site, that one group policy will apply to all the machines in that domain. Local, site, domain policies, OU policies, and sub-OU. Remember this. LSD on cell. Basically, local policies get applied first, then site policies are applied next. If there's a conflict, the site policy would override it. Then domain policies. If there's a conflict, the domain policies would override. Then policies on OUs, then policies on sub-OUs. So the closer, and let's say I had a computer or user object in an OU, it's the closest thing to that user object, so that policy will be applied last. So it takes all the policies, jams them into one policy, override anything that it needs to, and it only sends one policy to the object, not a bunch of different layers. It takes all the policies, forms them into one, and it sends it to that object.
What is it again? Local site domain?
Local site, domain, OU, sub-OU. I think they added that sub-OU just to make the acronym work. But there's a few other acronyms. That's the one that's stuck in my head. The shock value. So I'm going to go to DC3 and promote it. I'm going to encrypt my password. And create a new domain controller. Guys, don't try to promote this until you know you have connectivity. If I can't go here and do NS lookup, contoso.com, I know if I can't reach it through DNS, I know I'm not ever going to be able to promote it. So make sure that you can ping across the WAN link. Because remember, it's like I'm now on North Campus. Credentials. Okay, this chair at an angle, I can't type. I don't need to move any roles. I don't need to block it from becoming a global catalog. It'll automatically make it a DNS server. So I'm going to run these two commands. Take another break, guys. Let's give it about 10 minutes just to promote, replicate across the WAN link. Hopefully it won't be as long as the 15-minute wait. And when we come back, it should automatically be in the east site. Okay? Dorothy. Normally, I think there is another woman that sits there. Normally, I think there's another woman that sits there. She's just not there today. I think it's,
I'm on my,
Yeah.
the practice one I made, but all I wanted to do was finish, and I just finally finished.
oh, okay. I just wanted you to not get comfortable.
No.
Guys, the other thing is, just don't rush this. Just let it sit for a few minutes. If you try to rush it, you get too much replication issues. Meaning, if you create a user account on one side, it just might not appear for a half hour, 45 minutes later. If you're on the day of the test, that could be a big problem. I go to Sites and Services. Am I missing anyone? No. I can see that DC3 is a global catalog. Now I'm going to turn it into a bridgehead server for IP. But if I go down to NTDS settings, okay, I already have a connection, which is good. So now I'm replicating from I'm replicating to DC3 from DC1. I'm replicating from DC1 and from to DC1 from 2 and 3, and from DC2 I'm only replicating from DC1. So far I've controlled replication. Only DC1 and DC3 are going across the WAN link. They're only talking to each other. DC3 isn't talking to 2 at all. And I'm going to replicate every 15 minutes. So it happened right away for me. That's good. So I'm going to go to DC4. I'm going to go over to DC1 to see what that. I'm going to highlight this, hit refresh. DC1 doesn't have all the data yet. DC1 doesn't know that it's replicating to DC3 yet. So I'm not going to wait. But you might want to wait till we get full replication. You know, some people do this. Just wait. You can try to force replication here. I would just wait. Worst case scenarios, you can always create a new replication link and define it yourself, as opposed to letting it automatically be generated. See, like right here, this is automatically generated. I can manually define who I want to replicate to. If I know I have a really flaky DC, it's up and down all the time, the NIC flips, at that point, I might want to define who that replicates to and make sure it only replicates to one other DC. So DC1 doesn't know everything yet. So I'm going to go and promote DC4. Now guys, if I throw in 2 domains, 2 DCs on each side, it really has a major effect on the replication. Things take like twice as long to show up. So when you create an object on the first site, not only does it have to replicate to all the DCs within that site, it then has to replicate to the global catalog, then replicate that to the other global catalog on the other side. Remember, a global catalog is a forest thing, not a domain thing. Going to encrypt my password. And promote it through DC. Guys, instead of doing this, what I'm doing here, I could do this. And nest it inside. This will work as well. So instead of using a variable, I can just convert the string. It's like double execution. Basically, it's going to execute everything in the center before executing the outer command. No. Cancel. I like to make the password a variable just so you can reuse it a bunch of times without having to type that whole command. Guys, I'm going to create 2 more servers. So I'm going to create 2 DFS servers. One on the west side, one on the east side. While I'm waiting, I'm just going to start them up. Okay, I'm going to talk about something else while I'm waiting. So look, I'm going to go to DC1. Guys, I don't have any clients, so you're just going to have to use your imagination here. But I'm going to open up a command prompt. When you're at a client and it's not getting a group policy or something like you think it should, well, you got to find out which server it's logging into If it's logging into a certain DC, you need to go to that DC to check why it's not getting the group policies, why it's not replicating those group policies to that DC, and that's why that client can't get to it. So if I type, I'm going to right click here, go to System Settings, System, Advanced, and here I have this environmental variables. I have a whole bunch of environmental variables already set for me. You can add new ones that you want. This is just for this user account. This is globally. But if I go into echo %sign login server, that'll tell me who I'm logging into. So if you're not getting a group policy, you got to find out why that DC I'm connecting to doesn't have the group policies to give them to me. So sometimes a lot of people go, well, I checked the policy, I created it on DC1, but no matter how many times I reboot this client, I'm not getting the group policy. Well, maybe because you're signing into DC4, and DC4 doesn't have the policies yet to give them to you. So you can always double check that. But the reason why I'm pointing this out is, if I'm on the West site, I'm always going to log on to a server on the West site, because we have something new in DNS now. So I'm going to go to Tools, go into DNS, into forward lookup zones. Now I have something called sites. So if I go into sites, I have an east and a west. So when my client boots up, it's going to query the domain saying, I need a DC to log in. Because when we join a computer to the domain, do we tell the computer who the domain controllers are? No, we just say who the DC is. I mean, we just say who the domain is. How does it find out who a domain controller is? It's done through DNS. So we could do NS lookup. It's going to do this query. It's going to say, give me the LDAP TCP West sites.contoso.com. Sorry guys, I have to go inside, and I'll tell you why. NS lookup set type equal SRV, a service record, because I'm trying to find out who's holding that service. So it's LDAP TCP West sites contoso.com. That's the hierarchy. So LDAP dot TCP dot West dot sites dot contoso.com. Who's the LDAP servers for the west side? 2 and 1. It will also query and find out who the global catalog server is. So we can do that as well. So this is where service records come into play. Right now, it doesn't know about any global catalog servers on the east site, because I'm not querying the east site. I'm only querying the west site. So if I go into the east site, there might be a global catalog over there. So when a client queries for DC or a global catalog server or any site-aware application, like DFS is site-aware. There's a whole bunch of site-aware applications. But it'll query and use those applications. So when a client signs in, it won't go across the WAN link. If it tries to connect to all the DCs in its own site, that those DCs are down, it will then query again and go across the WAN link. But right now, it's going to try to sign into one of these two servers. So when a client signs in, it won't go across the WAN link. If it tries to connect to all the DCs in its own site, those DCs are down, it will then query again and go across the WAN link. But right now, it's going to try to sign into one of these two servers. That'll be the global catalog that it uses. What port does LDAP listen to? 389. What protocol? UDP or TCP? There's the name. Those are interview questions, guys. LDAP is 3389 TCP. What is Kerberos? 88. Sorry. I could give these, I could go in DNS and change the priority and make one of these DCs more preferred to sign in against than others by changing that priority or changing the weight. So that's what service records are for, because your client doesn't know who offers every service. It queries DNS to find out those services. If you had a KMS server, what's a KMS server? Key management server. Let's say I need a product ID to sign in. I will contact a key man. I will query DNS, find out who the key management server is, get a product ID from that key management server, use it, and when I'm done and I log off, I'll contact the key management server and give it back to them. They can use for another client. So if I have 600 machines, but I never have 400 on at any one time, why buy 600 licenses? Why not just buy 400 and share them? Microsoft came up with this concept. It saves companies money because they don't have to buy as many licenses, but it also prevents where are most product IDs stolen? From techs. So this way you never give a tech a product ID. It's all entered in the key management server. You set up the server, you buy the license, you go into the key management server, you indicate how many licenses you bought. So again, that's going to be all done through DNS. Guys, there's UDP here as well. UDP services aren't really site aware, but there's some stuff offered under UDP as well. Okay, let's go check DC4, see how it's going. It's up. I'm going to sign into the first DFS server just to get that process going. I made this a global catalog server and I shouldn't have. And no one here reminded me not to. But it's easy enough to fix. Go in Sites and Services, uncheck the box. Sites and Services. That server's automatically in the west site. I'm going to check that. I don't want a global catalog here.
3's already on, right?
3's already one. If you go highlight services, you can see that. Give it a minute to update. I can see that 3 replicates from 1 and 4. 4 only replicates to 3. 1 replicates from 2 and 3. And 2 replicates from 1 only. So let's go see what the other side knows about. Because remember, it might be behind in the data. Sorry, I had this open. I'm going to close it here. Four knows about 3. 3 now replicates from 1 and 4. 4 replicates. Look how quickly replication occurred. It already knows. No, it still thinks it's a global catalog. So we just got to give it more time. It'll work itself out. Don't try to force it. Don't go do it on the east side and come over here and uncheck it again on the west side. You're just going to make it. If you unchecked it over on the other side, give it some time, and it will ultimately reach. It's unchecked here. Don't go do it again on the other side, because you're just going to confuse it. So I'm going to join DFS R1 to the domain. R1 is on the west side, so I'm going to give it the next available IP. 16.0.4. It's /18. I want to point it to the 2 DNS servers on this side. I can point it to 3 or 2 first. It doesn't really matter. You might want to keep flipping them to alternate. Cut it like a poor man's load balance. Guys, I just want to show you a little bit of group policies and sites. So I just need something to create a group policy for. I'm going to turn this into a DFS root server and a file server simultaneously. It'll hold the roots, the links, and the shares. One on either side. I'm going to do the same thing for DFS2. This is going to be on the east side, so I'm going to give it the next available IP on the east. .1 will be the gateway. I'm going to point it to 64.3 and 64.2 for name resolution. gonna sign into DFS1 as a domain admin. I'm gonna find out which server I'm signing into, whether I'm signing into DC1 or 2. I'm going to do the same thing to DFS2. So I'm signing into DC2 right now. So I'm going to install DFS. Make a DFS share real quick. Namespace, replication. Guys, the more practice you get with DFS, it can't hurt. Does anyone use DFS at their job at all?
No, we don't.
And do you have any redundancy as far as file server, or is everything on the cloud?
I don't think so. They end up using like, you know what is it, USMT to transfer profiles and stuff?
Oh,
It's a pain in the ass.
I'm going to do the same thing to DFS 2. It's installed on one. Okay, it's installing the other. So I'm going to go over and do everything from DFS1. I'm going to add the servers. You don't need to do this. I think it makes life a lot easier if everything's on one machine. Why can't I add the server?
DFS2.
Yeah. Because I imagine I'm logging into 2 different servers. Who's DFS2 logged into? Echo. DC4. When I joined the domain, I probably created my computer account on DC3 or 4, and it hasn't replicated over to DC 1 or 2 yet. I actually need it to be replicated to DC2. So if I created the account on 4, I have to wait for it to replicate to DC3. Then I have a 15-minute delay to replicate to DC1. Then I have another 5-minute delay before it replicates to DC2. At that point, that's when I can see it. What you guys will do is go in there and start clicking forcing replication and start breaking things. Just wait. Just give it some time. There's nothing you can do. And so I wouldn't be able to go through this process of completing anything until that replication occurs. So if I go into Active Directory sites and services, users and computers. Yeah, I only see DC1. If I go over to DC4, DC4 knows about it, but it doesn't know about DFS1. Let's see what DC3 knows. It only knows about 2 so far. DC 2. DC2 knows about it. Let's go back to DC1. Okay, so now DC1 knows about it. So it's got copied over. Let's try it again. Now I see them both. If you want to put everything under a group, DFS. Still missing some data though. I can't sign in, so and if I try to move ahead at this point, I can't even resolve the name. I gotta wait to so when this kind of stuff happens, it might be 15 minutes before it works itself out. Actually, I'm going to stop the video and just let it sit here for a little bit. Guys, I'm going to continue this next time we meet. I'm going to keep dumping more things onto this base setup. So that's where we're going to end right now. Guys, get in here, practice,